Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sri Rao. I'm a no-code enthusiast and partner with Silversmith, a growth equity firm. I'm really excited and grateful to be joined by an amazing panel of entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs from some of the leading no-code platforms who are really at the forefront of this movement. Perhaps we can start by going around and introducing our panelists. Emmanuel, would you mind going first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emmanuel Strashnov, and I'm founder of Bubble, a no-code platform that I started with Josh 9 years ago now. So it's been quite a while, and it's great to be here tonight.
Great. Chris?
Hey, I am Chris Byers. I am the CEO of FormStack, and we love to help people save time, save money, get rid of those tedious processes. And so love doing that with a no-code platform and look forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Chris. David?
Hey, I'm David, founder and CEO of Glide. Glide turns your spreadsheets into beautiful apps and websites without writing any code. I guess that's why I'm here, and happy to be here today.
Awesome. Mariam?
Hey everyone, I'm Mariam, the co-founder and CEO of Software, which is the easiest no-code platform for building custom apps and portals using Airtable as a backend with zero learning curve required.
Thanks, Mariam. And Vlad?
Wow, I'm so proud to be in a room with so many awesome people. I'm Vlad, founder and CEO of Webflow, and we help people build websites and applications in a no-code visual development way, and started 8+ years ago and really trying to elevate the entire no-code movement, which is why I'm so glad to be in the room with so many amazing people.
Thanks, everyone. So my first question is one I would love to ask each of you, starting with Mariam. What inspired you to build a no-code company and get involved in this exciting movement?
Yeah, it's funny. So it started really me from my previous experience of building and leading product and engineering teams for more than a decade. Every company I joined, we kept the same things over and over, things like authentication, payments, listings. And while in leadership roles, I also struggle to find tech talent. And we know innovation is moving at a pace that education can't just keep up, right? And at the same time, while I realized the power of engineering genius and what it can accomplish, I found it really unfair that only a small portion of the world's population has access to that genius. So we really wanted to build a platform that empowers anyone without tech or design skills to build software without relying on engineering resources.
Amazing. Vlad, would love to hear your story as well.
I have a feeling that so many of our stories are going to be so similar, or the original motivations. I actually had a background in graphic design, and I wanted to study 3D animation and work at Pixar. So I went to art school, where I got to learn these like really powerful 3D animation tools, which are very visual, but also very technically complex. You know, you could do modeling, rigging, particle effects, so many more things that you see on the movie screen with special effects, Pixar movies, etc. And through that process, really learned how powerful software can be to enable people to access a really complex medium. And then I dropped out of art school just out of necessity and went to work at a web design agency, where the process was totally different. It was a set of designers that were handing me as an intern these Photoshop files to translate into HTML and CSS, and it felt completely broken. Here's a world where creative people are using really powerful software to push to movie screens, and here's web development that is fundamentally like 20 years behind. And that was the original inspiration around like, how do we bring that level of visual development and complexity into the really creative realm on the web? There's so many people who were practicing web design, but it was had this kind of barrier of having to rely on a developer to translate their vision to reality. And what that usually meant was that their vision wasn't even landing on a website, right? It was a watered down version of their creative genius. And that was the original inspiration. How do we create something like 3D animation tools for web design and web development? And that was the original inspiration behind Webflow. And underneath all that was the same theme that Mariam mentioned was like, it's not fair. Why is this power, in the hands of only the few who know how to code? How do we open it up to so many more people?
Really democratizing. Yeah, that's fantastic. And Emmanuel, how about you?
Yeah, this is going to be a similar story to Vlad and Mariam. We started Bubble in 2012. That was the beginning of the startup bubble, no pun intended, where a lot of people wanted to start companies at that point, and a lot of non-technical people like myself. I was graduating from business school, and back in 2012, it was a war, to try to be friends with the developers to build your company. And we felt like it was a shame because most of these people that were trying to find a technical co-founder were actually very capable of describing the product they wanted to build. They were driven, they were smart, they just, again, didn't have their best friend from high school, a software engineer. And we felt, you have this group of people, they want to try a lot of ideas. Some of these ideas will work out, some of these ideas will not work out. But what we felt is that back to the furnace point that Vlad and Mariam mentioned, they really deserve to be tried out. It was a shame that those ideas would not exist because of the shortage of engineers. And so we were like, you have a group of smart people, let's build a tool for them so that they can do everything on their own without the need of an engineer. So we didn't start thinking, this is going to be a no-code tool. We started thinking, let's empower non-technical founders to start companies. And 9 years later, the market has expanded a little bit, and now we have different use cases, but it's still very much the core of what we do. We're going to people telling them, instead of trying to find a technical co-founder, you can start your company on Bubble and then scale on the platform.
Chris, how about you? Yeah, the beginnings of FormStack go all the way back to a business I had pre-FormStack 20 years ago, where we were building custom web-based software. And I was not technical, but had a great friend who was an engineer. So it was really the beginning of me discovering how I think there's so many people in the world that the way I describe it is if you gave them a piece of paper and a pen, they could sketch out for you exactly how a process should work or how some software should work. They just don't have the skills to get it done themselves. And so where we can come along and enable them, and every time we release that next thing that makes it that much easier to get the job done, that's what kind of keeps us motivated to do what we're doing, and why we got started really in the beginning.
Fantastic. And David, how about you?
I think my story is actually quite different. So I am a software engineer, and I made Glide because I love to code, actually. I was making an app to remember my mom's birthday, and I was designing it and coding it, and I kept getting stuck on all these things that weren't fun. And I've also spent about the last 10 or 15 years designing developer tools for people who code. And I was like, I like coding. I like some parts of it. And there's all this other stuff that's kind of fussy. So I started by creating something for myself to let me focus on the parts that I thought were more fun about designing and creating software. And that turned into Glide.
Amazing. And so I guess, David, sticking with you, as you were getting that initial product and then ultimately a company off the ground, what were some challenges you faced and how did you solve them?
Well, the first challenge is making something that anyone wants to look at twice. So I had something that people were willing to look at once for maybe 3 or 4 months. It was this clunky developer tool that I kind of made for my narrow needs in that project I described. And it would turn this sort of data format into some code for a developer. And I would show it to people who were close to me, friends, and get feedback. And they'd say, oh, I think I know what you're showing me, but if it was a little bit easier in this way or that way, maybe I can understand it. And then getting to that crucial moment where you show it to your friends and they say, hey, I could use this actually at work. I could use this for my swim club or some project I have in mind, and people got their hands on it. That's the critical first problem to solve. And you just solve it by brainstorming and iterating and getting feedback from people.
Absolutely. And Vlad, maybe a little unfair because I've heard this story a couple of times, but would love to hear a little bit about the early days at Webflow.
I can make something up so it's new for you. I think our biggest challenge in the beginning was this tension between what I would call power and ease of use. Because when Webflow first started, we essentially decided actually what David described about creating a tool for developers. Webflow originally was inspired a little bit by DevTools in the browser, where you would write some code and then you would go kind of into this developer mode and move some sliders around or use like a color picker. And the original, once we actually put that product in front of people, it was like pretty highly technical compared to other website builders like a Squarespace or a Wix. And all the feedback we got from customers, from designers, from even developers was that it's too hard to use for people who don't understand coding or coding principles or something like the box model or how the web works. And it's not powerful enough for people who are coders, who are expecting a lot more flexibility. So the first 6 months was a really tough challenge where a lot of customer voice and pressure was like, hey, you got to go make something that's much easier, that's a lot closer to Squarespace, but maybe has a little bit more design control. But we were just really, and we would kind of walk around the building that we were renting at the time as our office, really in this dilemma of, we're not really getting enough user adoption because it's such a sophisticated product, but we so much believe in the sophistication as the avenue to build more powerful websites and applications, that we were just so close to pivoting and making it more of like a templated website builder, like the traditional website builders. But that was the biggest challenge because we weren't getting enough adoption. People were having a really hard time understanding the complexity of the product because you essentially had to become like a developer light to understand the box model, to understand how to use CSS classes, to understand how to do layouts, et cetera. But I'm glad we had just enough traction and just enough belief and hope that it would work, because sticking it out really did create the conditions for people to create all sorts of really, really, unique and powerful designs in Webflow. And I think that's what's made us pretty successful so far.
Mariam, how about you? It must have been an interesting situation to be building a new product in a new company during a pandemic, in addition to all the usual things about, building a new company.
Definitely, that has definitely been very interesting. Actually, the interesting fact is, even 2 years ago, we started building the entire company 2 years ago. The product has just launched not even a year ago, but really, even 2 years ago, the no-code was not that popular yet, and it was really insanely difficult to make people believe that it's actually possible to build something useful with no-code tools, even with existing tools like Webflow, Bubble. But really, the biggest challenge we have had so far, and still having every day, is is really making it insanely easy. So the thing that Vlad described really resonates very much with us as well, is how do you turn these technical concepts into something that is really easy to use, but at the same time is very powerful. As I described, software is really our main kind of value proposition, is building custom apps, right? So it has to have a backend logic, it has to have databases, etc., which is really very technical. And an example is, how do you turn complex thing like an authentication flow into simple and easy to use interface for an ordinary person to just use that? And in software, that's literally just one click now. And the way we really think about that, and we have approached this, is with software, we explicitly try to put constraints on what you can do. So the answer what we were looking for while building software was really to find the right balance, like the golden middle between just enough customizability and enough constraints. Because what we realized is, all of the people we talked to, while there is all of these great tools that you can build quite powerful applications, but most of them we talk to, especially like everyone without technical and design skills, they kind of got into decision paralysis. They weren't able to use this all of the powerful stuff that was given to them. So we explicitly decided to trim it down to the most needed stuff, and trim it down to a point where you actually are given some best practice, best design building blocks, which come in pre-built. You can still change the layout, the design, but all of the backend logic and all of the databases, so the heavy work is really done for you. So literally the way we have built software is taking that into consideration. So anything that you use is already coming in pre-built with huge kind of powerful backend. And that's really what is ongoingly a biggest challenge, because everything you put into the platform is going to make it more complex, but we have to be very careful of how do we make sure that it doesn't happen.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. A tough balance to strike. Emmanuel, would love to hear a little more about the early days at Bubble, maybe some of the things that, didn't go as planned at that point in the company's life.
The early days for Bubble were a little bit special because we bootstrapped the company for many, many years. And so the first 5 years were only me and my co-founder, just the two of us building everything. I would say the most challenging thing that we had to face with, and it's going to sound similar to some of the other people, but I'm going to frame it differently, is the tension we had between existing users and new users. Because the commitment we made to our users was that they could build their full product on us and run their startup on top of our platform. And so they would always come to us asking for more power, more features, like more connections to different services, like a lot of different things. And then we had new users that were coming in and they were asking for more ease of use and an easier learning curve. And we were just very resource constrained, obviously, with just 2 people. It was a time where I don't think it was necessarily a good thing to raise money for a platform like this one. And so we had to do with just our 4 hands and do everything. And so managing this constant, struggle between these 2 types of users that we wanted to serve. I mean, the existing one and the new ones or potential ones was something very challenging. Overall, I would say 8 out of times would give the priority to existing users for 2 reasons. The first one being there is a real moral commitment here especially in the early days, we would actually, I wouldn't know personally our users. It was not Zoom, it was Skype. We would Skype with people and then, get to know each other a little bit, tell them, trust us. You're going to be able to build your Airbnb type platform, like something like Twitter on Bubble. We'll make it work for you. We'll guarantee you we'll do whatever we can for that. Then it's very difficult to at some point be like, oh, sorry, that's a feature we can't build. We're going to build something else. And so there was this moral commitment. And then there is a little bit of a deep belief for us that what I think is very important for a no-code platform like Bubble and no-code in general is to be extremely powerful to at some point make that engineers believe in the platform, that they believe that they can build real things. Because no-code is cool today. It started becoming really a thing over the last 2-3 years. But until software engineers use no-code platforms like Bubble, Webflow, Software, or Glide to build tools because it's a better way to build. It's just faster and more efficient to build on no-code platforms. And then they keep their coding skills and coding chops for the new things that are not created yet. We won't have succeeded yet, as a movement. And to do that, you need a ton of features. Now, today, 9 years in, we have a lot of features. Like Bubble is extremely powerful. And so now we need to catch a little bit on either fuse because we want to create a platform that is easier to adopt. So it's all about, going back and forth between these 2. But that was definitely in the early years what I was struggling the most with because I wanted more users, but I had some time to say, sorry, I need to take care of my current users.
That's really interesting. And you said something that I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, as recently as Mariam noted, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, a lot of folks hadn't really heard the term no code, or if they had, they didn't really know what it meant and whether it applied to them, whether they were freelancers or small businesses, enterprises, engineers, technical folks, non-technical, sort of like, is this directed at me? Is there something that I can, use this for? And so we're kind of in, I hesitate to say it, almost a mode where it's turning into a bit of a buzzword. A lot of companies kind of slap no code on it. And I'm thinking about it from your perspectives. How do you really position products, articulate it, message it right in a marketing context to make sure that the right audiences hear about your products, but then understand what's possible with these amazing technologies? And so, Chris, maybe I'll start with you there.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because we're really talking about the psychology of a user and what are they thinking about when they decide to start, trying to solve a problem. And so we really try to introduce that kind of, we'll call it one use case at a time. So for us, we love it when people come in and just start with a simple use case. It's, it could be lead capture, it could be a contract generation, something like that. But then they start to discover, oh, if I connect these products together using some of the canvas builders, et cetera, all of a sudden I can start to see I can solve some much more complex problems. And so that's where I think those blocks, those templates, all of those become really wonderful starting points for customers. And really, it's just a framework for them. It helps them kind of get oriented in the product, get going quickly. And then once they're sold that they will eventually be able to solve their problem, they're already a customer. Maybe they don't actually build the full solution yet, but I think that moment of wow kind of happens and they're like, okay, I know I can get this done. And so I'm committed.
Got it. David, how about you? How has marketing and messaging evolved just as the overall category has evolved?
I mean, we've always kept the no-code term a little bit at arm's length. And I think on our website, we have the phrase no code, but it's like not the hyphenated one. It's like with no code or something like that. But we don't really have super strong opinions about it. Our more sophisticated customers just have a problem they're trying to solve. And they, like Chris said, they look at your tool and they see the capabilities. One tool can build a form. This tool can build a beautiful landing page. Here's something that can build something data-driven and interactive. And they already have some familiarity with other tools and they're trying to connect things together. So we just try to give them examples of what they can do and make the tool really compelling. And one of my sort of philosophical reasons why no code is not super attractive, or it's not the way we view software, is that software is so much more than code. I think code is like the easiest or one of the easier parts. Well, for me as an engineer, like the code part of your software is one of the easier things. And there's like distribution, security, data, hosting, deployment, design, legal compliance. Like it's super complicated. And with Glide, at least we're trying to help you with all of those aspects. And the code part is just one of them.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Mariam, how about you? How have you tried to really position, the product and make sure that people understand what it's capable of?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have actually the company's messaging as well has been evolved quite a bit as we have been evolving, because it's still the early days, and it's like because as well our website is built with software. We just keep changing every time we learn something new. We just keep adapting, and I think I'm going to repeat what others said, but really focusing on, even though we have a very horizontal platform, you can use the same building blocks, build anything that you think of, but still you have to give people different examples and use cases, because unless you tell them, okay, you can build this type of app or this type of app, it's really quite abstract and they can't really imagine. And it's also very difficult for people to rely on them just diving into the product, trying it out and building something unless they know what they really want to build. So that is exactly one of the biggest things we have done, is really identifying different use cases, which are key use cases, not everything, but just kind of having that in the messaging in the first place so people can identify their problems with those use cases. Plus, of course, we have also launched lots of templates, lots of content. I mean, content and education, I think, is a big part for all of us, right? It's still the early days and we have to really do a lot of work on the content and education, meaning like we have started building lots of video tutorials, tutorials of how to build this and that. And this is also something that our community has been helping us a lot. I mean, there is tremendous amount of tutorials and video content that our customers or just users have been producing. So yeah, I mean, there's still a huge amount of work to do, but in terms of our approach, mainly have been really driving different use cases, different templates, and types of examples that customers have built, success stories, etc., in order to help customers really identify where they stand and what specifically they can build with the tool.
Great. Emmanuel, would love to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've struggled with that in the beginning because the feedback we heard too often is that can't be true. That is too good to be true. Visual programming has been tried out for like decades almost, and it never works because people still learn coding in school. And to be fair, I mean, it was true in a sense that there has been a lot of attempts in the 80s and the 90s, and no one actually succeeded yet, because this is only now that we start seeing tools that are powerful enough for people to take them seriously. Our approach to solve that was actually to rely on the community, not just to create content, but also to convince their friends that it was worth trying. Because when you try to build something where, again, now no code is cool, but at the beginning, kind of everybody was not believing in it, almost against it. Like when we started, it was all about teaching how to code, actually. So we were coming with a very different approach. It's very hard to get that marketing message across. And if I'm, going on a podcast or anywhere and say, trust me, this works, you're going to still thinking that I'm selling my product here, which I am. Well, if your friend tells you, hey, no, I built, my MVP on this and it's actually working, try it. Pretty much 99% of the time, you're going to convert that person. And so we've been relying a lot on that. Very practically, that means, first of all, setting a community. So we were doing that pretty traditionally, with the discourse forum. And then over time, we started seeing some ambassadors, not necessarily a title we have officially, but some people that start, taking more ownership of the community, either on their region, on the web, or even physically. Like I'm in Paris right now, and the community is very strong with some clearly identified people that are pushing the movement. And so that's how we've been able to almost get away without, necessarily nailing our marketing messages, with a community that was able to do that at a time where really people didn't believe what we were doing. Today, it's a very different thing, because now that no code has some steam, we can start, shaping the narrative a little bit more and people take us seriously. But I would say that only happens over the last 18 months.
And Vlad, obviously, lots of different kinds of things being built on Webflow today. And, with our audience, say, I'm sure a bunch of folks that have done just that, as they kind of evolve their products also into companies in many ways, the ways you have, what would your advice be to those folks as they look to distribute those products, monetize them, and build awareness for them?
It's really hard to give kind of, as David said before, when you're building either a software company or a product with no-code tools, code itself or the definition of that application or that website is just a small slice of the problem that you're solving. So there's only so much, horizontal advice you can give, because every single solution, every single message, every single, product or idea that you're putting out there, the hard part is actually finding a customer need, like landing that, making sure that your message resonates and you find customers or you find clients or people who need that solution. We're talking about our own marketing messages because we're trying to do the same thing. How do we bring the power of visual development or no code to more people and help them realize that this could be a very powerful tool to solve real world problems and business problems, et cetera. That's always going to be the hard part that is so unique to every single business. No code just unlocks the ability to do that faster and to iterate faster and to try more ideas and to have more people try those ideas, which I think is the biggest theme, the democratization part of this. It's almost like when the printing press was available to just like less than 1% of people. And then the world kind of came to learn more of this language of, literacy and writing and sharing ideas. And we're kind of still in that early days phase, like Mariam said, of no code, of getting people to believe through examples of what's actually possible. And really that doesn't remove the complexity of, once you know how to write, doesn't make writing a novel any easier. Just like having no-code tools at your fingertips doesn't make it so much easier to essentially identify a problem, land product market fit, et cetera. So my advice is always kind of generic business advice, like really get to know your customer, really get to know like who you're trying to sell to, what problem you're trying to solve. And that's going to remain the case, whether it's no code or not. No code is just it gives you tailwinds and superpowers to just go faster and try out more things, and gives that ability to a lot more people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories, for offering those perspectives, and building this amazing set of technologies that is enabling all of those things that Vlad touched upon. Certainly, they don't. It's not one size fits all and a cure all to build the business on autopilot. But it's certainly a great way to get started and be able to build, particularly for lots of folks that historically have been unable to do so, and really being able to democratize the ability to build for the web. So thank you for everything that you all are doing in support of that.
Thank you, Shri. Thank you, everyone.